Have you ever seen a small company just completely capture the market's attention out of nowhere?
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
This time you guys sent in some fascinating stuff about Tenon Medical.
Ticker TNON.
Yeah, TNON. And oh boy, did they have a day on March 25th, 2025.
What?
What a day.
I mean, the stock just absolutely exploded,
Okay.
up over 300% in a single day.
That's insane.
Crazy, right? A move like
Yeah.
that just makes you have to ask, like, what's the story here? What could possibly cause that kind of, crazy investor enthusiasm?
For sure. Yeah, you really want to know, like, what's going on under the hood to make a stock jump like that.
So that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Sounds good.
We're going to unpack, Tenon Medical's business,
Yeah.
the news that kind of set off this whole rocket. And we're
Yeah.
going to try to understand this whole thing using our, value investing principles.
Blew it.
So we've got a ton of, reports and articles we've been looking at,
Cool.
all linked in the description for you guys.
Plus, we'll have some, further thoughts maybe on, potential stock movements
Right.
over in the YouTube comments.
Sounds good.
So let's get started by getting a really clear picture of what Tenon Medical actually does.
Okay, so Tenon Medical, they're a medical device company,
Okay.
and they're really focused on these sacroiliac or SI joint disorders.
SI joint. Okay.
Yeah, so these are the joints that connect like your spine to your pelvis.
Uh-huh.
And when these aren't working right, it can be a huge source of pain.
Makes sense.
So Tenon makes this catamaran SI joint fusion system,
Okay.
and they sell it to hospitals and surgeons to basically help fix this pain.
Gotcha. So the catamaran system, what makes it so special? What's like their big innovation here?
So their approach is really interesting.
Okay.
The catamaran uses a less invasive technique to get to the SI joint.
Uh-huh.
They call it the inferior posterior angle.
Inferior posterior.
Yeah, so basically they're going in from below and behind instead of directly from the front or back.
Okay, I'm trying to picture that.
Yeah, it's pretty specialized stuff.
Yeah.
They use this single titanium implant
Oh.
that's super strong and helps the joint fuse together.
To stabilize it.
Exactly. And the cool part is this patented osteotome bridge.
Okay.
It basically helps to create the perfect space for the implant.
Interesting.
And then the implant itself has these things called fenestrated pontoons.
Fenestrated pontoons. I don't even know what that.
Yeah, so you can think of them like tiny little compartments with holes in them.
Oh, okay.
That design is super important because it lets the bone actually grow into the implant.
Wow. So it becomes part of the bone.
Exactly. It makes the fusion way stronger and more stable.
Very cool.
They actually have a smaller version, too, called the Catamaran SE.
Oh, really?
It's probably for different patient sizes and, whatever the surgeon prefers.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So in what kind of situations would a surgeon even use this catamaran system? Like, who are the patients that would benefit from this?
They're going after three main areas.
Okay.
First is primary SI joint procedures.
Primary.
So that's when the SI joint itself is the main problem.
Makes sense.
Second is revision procedures.
Revision.
Yeah. So like if someone had an SI joint implant before, but it didn't work.
Ah, so they have to go back in.
Right. And the third area is using the catamaran system along with spinal fusion.
Oh, interesting.
So if a patient is getting like a bigger spine surgery, the surgeon might decide to fuse the SI joint too, just to make it more stable.
I see, like to prevent future problems.
Exactly.
Now, it seems like they've had some early adoption, right? We saw reports of over 700 devices already implanted.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
That means surgeons are seeing some value in this thing, right?
Definitely, it shows that they're gaining acceptance in the surgical world.
Uh-huh.
I mean, think about the benefits for both patients and surgeons.
Yeah, for sure.
For patients, this less invasive approach means they can recover faster and get better results.
Right.
Less pain and, better function in the long run.
That's huge.
And they have data from this mainsail study to back it up. And for surgeons, the system is designed to be easier and safer to use.
Yeah, that makes a big difference in the OR.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's zoom out a little bit and think about the bigger picture here.
Okay.
How big is the market for this SI joint fusion stuff, and where's it headed?
So overall, the market looks like it's on a major upswing.
Okay.
Different reports have slightly different numbers,
Sure.
but the trend is clear.
Upward trend.
Yeah. One source says it'll grow from about $900 million in 2024
Okay.
to almost $5 billion by 2033.
Wow, that's a huge jump.
Yeah, that's a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of almost 19%.
19%. Okay.
Another report estimates a CAGR of over 20% between 2022 and 2032,
Okay.
reaching about $3.9 billion.
Okay, so pretty consistent, right?
And a third one says the global market was at about $294 million in 2023.
Okay.
And they think it'll grow at over 19% until 2030.
Wow. So yeah, pretty consistent numbers.
Yeah, all signs point to this market just exploding.
That's pretty exciting.
It really is.
So why is this happening? What's driving all this growth?
I think it's a few things.
Okay.
First, doctors are getting better at understanding how SI joint issues cause low back pain.
Uh-huh.
Second, there's a big push for these minimally invasive techniques.
Makes sense.
Less pain, quicker recovery.
Right.
But we should also keep in mind
What's that?
estimates for markets like this can be all over the place.
Sure. Especially in new medical areas.
Exactly. So the real growth depends on how fast people start using these procedures and whether insurance companies will pay for them.
Right. The reimbursement piece is huge.
Absolutely.
So of all this potential growth, I can't imagine Tenon is the only one trying to get a piece of the pie.
Oh, yeah. They've got competition for sure.
Who are the big players they're going up against?
So there are some big names in medical devices already in this space.
Okay.
Companies like Medtronic,
Uh-huh.
SI-BONE,
Okay.
Globus Medical,
All right.
Zimmer Biomet,
The big players.
yeah, and Orthofix.
Wow. So how can Tenon compete with all those giants?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
Especially since they were so small before all this.
Right.
They're kind of like David going up against Goliath.
It does feel that way.
They're trying to carve out their own space with their unique technology.
It's a tough battle.
It is for sure.
Now, the medical device world always seems super regulated.
It is very strict.
What kind of hurdles does a company like Tenon have to clear just to get their product out there and, keep it on the market?
You're absolutely right. It's a tough regulatory landscape.
Yeah.
Here in the U.S., the FDA is the big one.
Right.
They're the ones who decide if devices like spinal implants are safe and effective.
It's a big deal.
Oh, yeah. To get FDA clearance, which Tenon just got for an expanded use of their system,
Oh, wow.
you have to prove that your device meets their super high standards.
So tons of testing.
Yeah, preclinical testing, clinical trials, the whole 9 yards.
Makes sense. But what about outside the U.S.?
That's where patents come in,
Okay.
like the ones Tenon just got in Europe. Patents are super important for protecting your intellectual property.
So no one else can steal your idea.
Exactly, and it helps them compete in international markets.
Gotcha. So they've got the FDA and patents covered, but what other obstacles could they run into?
A few things come to mind.
Like what?
Well, first, it can be hard to even diagnose SI joint dysfunction.
Really?
Yeah, the symptoms can look like other back problems.
Oh, that's tricky.
It is, and it can slow down finding the right patients for their device.
I see.
Second, convincing insurance companies to pay for a new technology is always a battle.
Right. They can be pretty hesitant.
Absolutely. They might not be so eager to cover minimally invasive procedures at first.
Yeah, that's a big hurdle.
It is. Then there's the whole education piece.
Education.
Yeah, Tenon needs to teach surgeons about this new technology.
So they understand how to use it.
Exactly. They need to be comfortable and skilled with the catamaran system.
Right. Makes sense.
And of course, they're up against those big companies we talked about.
Right. The ones with all the connections.
Exactly. They already have strong relationships with surgeons and hospitals.
So Tenon has to break into that network.
Yeah, it's not easy. And on top of all that, just getting regulatory clearance takes a ton of time and money.
It sounds like a real uphill battle.
It is, but they seem to be making progress.
They do. So what's their secret sauce? What gives them an edge over the competition?
Their main advantage is definitely their catamaran system.
Yeah, it seems pretty unique.
It is the design, the less invasive approach, the single implant, it all sets them apart.
Uh-huh.
Plus, getting that FDA clearance for spinal fusion was huge.
Yeah, that expands their market a lot.
For sure. And the European patents protect their intellectual property in a key market.
And don't forget about the main sales study.
Right. That's important, too.
That gives them credibility.
Definitely, all these factors make it harder for competitors to copy them.
That's a big deal in this business.
It is.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about the people in charge.
Sure.
Who's leading Tenon Medical?
So the management team looks pretty experienced. Richard Ferrari is the executive chairman.
Oh.
He's been in the medical device world for a long time,
Uh-huh.
and he's raised a lot of capital for different companies.
That's important for a growing company.
It is, for sure.
What about the CEO?
That's Stephen M. Foster.
Okay.
He's got over 30 years in medical devices.
Wow.
Marketing, sales, general management.
The whole package.
Yeah. And he even worked at Medtronic.
That's a big name.
It is.
What about the tech side of things?
So Richard Jin is the CTO and a founder of the company.
Okay.
He's the brains behind their technology.
Uh-huh.
Over 300 patents to his name.
Wow.
And he's got experience with venture capital, too.
So he knows how to get funding.
Exactly.
And who's keeping the books straight?
That's Kevin Williamson, the CFO.
Okay.
He's got a finance background in medical devices.
So the whole team seems pretty solid.
Yeah, they've got the right kind of experience to navigate this market.
Now, are they transparent with their investors? Do they keep people in the loop?
Yeah, they seem to communicate pretty well.
Good.
They have an investor relations contact.
Okay.
And they do regular earnings calls and webcasts.
So they keep people updated.
Right. And they have a code of conduct, too.
Which is standard for public companies.
Exactly. Shows they're committed to ethical business practices.
So where are they putting their money? What are their spending priorities?
They're mostly focused on investing in their core business.
Makes sense.
They're working on the catamaran system, including that smaller catamaran SE version.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing research and clinical studies.
To prove their technology works.
Right. And they're also putting money into sales and marketing.
To get the word out.
Exactly, targeting those specialized surgeons.
That's smart.
Yeah, they're not doing stock buybacks or dividends right now.
Which is normal for a company at this stage.
Right. They're all about growth.
Speaking of growth, what about profitability? What's their return on invested capital looking like?
So their financials are still a bit iffy.
Yeah.
They have negative profitability metrics.
Like
Their profit margins returns on assets and equity.
all in the red?
Yeah, so their return on invested capital is probably negative too.
Meaning they're not making money on their investments yet.
Right, but there's a potential bright side.
What's that?
They did this registered direct offering at a premium price.
Premium price, okay.
Yeah, they raised $1.5 million from an investor who paid more than the stock was trading for.
Interesting.
That could be a good sign for shareholders.
Why is that?
It means they got funding at a good valuation, so they might not need to dilute their shares as much in the future.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Let's dig into the numbers a bit more.
Okay.
What were their key financials looking like right before that big stock price jump?
So on March 24th, 2025, the day before everything went crazy,
Right?
Tenon's market capitalization was tiny, just over $3 million.
$3 million.
Yeah, and their price-to-earnings ratio was either 0 or negative.
Okay.
That's normal for companies that aren't profitable yet.
That makes sense. So what about their revenue?
So their revenue was growing, which is good.
All
For all of 2024, they hit $3.3 million.
Okay.
That's a 12% increase from 2023.
For double-digit growth?
Yeah, and 2023 itself was massive. They grew over 323% that year.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is, but then in the fourth quarter of 2024, things slowed down a bit.
Okay.
Their revenue was basically flat compared to the same period in 2023.
Oh, so not as much momentum.
Right. And one report even said it went down a little.
So some mixed signals there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so revenue growth is there, but it's a little inconsistent.
Right.
What about their actual profits? Are they moving in the right direction?
They're making some progress on their gross profit margin.
Okay.
For 2024, it was 52%.
52%. Okay.
Which is up from 42% in 2023.
So that's an improvement.
It is, but in the fourth quarter of 2024, it went down again.
Oh, back down.
Compared to the year before.
Okay, so another mixed signal.
Yeah, but the good news is they did reduce their net loss in 2024.
Okay, what was it?
Down to $13.7 million.
$13.7 million.
Which is better than the $15.6 million loss they had in 2023.
Okay, so still losing money, but not as much.
Right.
Gotcha.
Now, their free cash flow is still negative.
Meaning they're burning cash.
Yeah, they're spending more than they're bringing in.
Okay. But what about their balance sheet? Is that healthy at least?
Yeah, their balance sheet actually looks pretty good.
Okay.
They have very little debt.
That's good.
And their price-to-book value was around 0.8.
0.8, okay.
They've also got good liquidity.
Meaning they can pay their bills.
Exactly. But their asset turnover ratio is low.
Meaning they're not using their assets very efficiently.
Right.
So it sounds like they've had good revenue growth over the past 5 years.
They have.
But they haven't figured out how to make consistent profits yet.
Not yet. And they don't pay any dividends either.
Okay, so that paints a decent picture of where they were financially before March 25th.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that big day.
That crazy day.
What on earth happened to send their stock price through the roof?
So it looks like a bunch of good news all hit at once.
A perfect storm.
Kind of, yeah. The biggest thing was the FDA clearance.
Oh, right. They got approval for something.
Yeah, for new use of their catamaran system.
Oh, wow. What was it?
They can now use it to help with thoracolumbar fusion.
Thoracolumbar fusion.
It's basically a more complex spine surgery.
Okay.
So this opens up a whole new market for them.
So it wasn't just a small approval. It was a big deal.
Yeah, it was huge for them.
Makes sense?
You know, FDA approval can really change everything for these small companies.
It's like a stamp of legitimacy.
Exactly. Investors take notice.
So that alone could explain the stock jump.
It's a big part of it, but there's more.
Oh, there's even more good news.
Yeah. They also got some European patents
For what?
for their catamaran SI joint fixation device.
Okay.
This protects their technology in another big market.
So they're going global.
They are. And
Yeah.
then there's one more piece.
Okay, lay it on me.
They did this registered direct offering and private placement.
What does that mean?
They basically raised $1.5 million.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
What's that?
The investor paid a higher price than the stock was trading for.
Oh, so they saw something special in Tenon.
Exactly. The market saw that as a huge vote of confidence.
Okay, so it was like a trifecta,
Yeah.
FDA clearance, European patents, and a big investment.
All at once.
No wonder the market went nuts.
Yeah, it was a wild day.
So what was the feeling around the stock after all that happened?
It was like night and day.
Really?
Yeah, before the news, things were kind of uncertain.
Because they weren't profitable.
Right. But all that good news just changed everything.
It created excitement.
So much excitement. Some reports said it was a sensation.
It's pretty dramatic.
Investors were suddenly super interested.
It makes sense. So what are the analysts saying now? Have they changed their tune?
So even before all this happened, analysts were pretty bullish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their price targets were way above where the stock was trading.
How much higher?
One said $16, another said $8.
Wow, that's a big jump.
And most of them already had a buy rating.
So they liked it even before the good news.
Yeah, but all this positive news probably made them even more optimistic.
Those are some pretty high price targets.
They are, and keep in mind they're not profitable yet.
Right. So how can they justify those numbers?
They're probably assuming Tenon will have huge success with their catamaran system.
So they think the revenue will skyrocket.
Exactly. But that's still a big if.
It is.
We'll have to see how it plays out.
What about short sellers? Were there a lot of people betting against the stock?
Not really. The short interest was pretty low.
How low?
Around 4%.
4%. Okay.
So we didn't see a big short squeeze.
Where everyone rushes to buy the stock and drives the price up even more.
Right. That wasn't a major factor here.
Interesting. So let's shift gears again and talk about ownership.
Okay.
Who owns Tenon Medical? What does that structure look like?
So institutional ownership was pretty low before the surge.
Like how low?
Somewhere between 4 and 15%, depending on the source.
And insider ownership was low too.
Meaning the management team and board members don't own much.
Right. That's not unusual for small companies.
Okay.
But it can make the stock price jump around more.
Because there aren't big investors to stabilize things.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's try to summarize everything we've talked about.
Sure.
Let's do a SWOT analysis.
Sounds good.
So what are Tenon Medical's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats?
All right, starting with strengths.
Strengths.
They've got this innovative catamaran system that's backed by positive clinical trial data.
Okay.
They've got FDA clearance for more uses now and patents in Europe.
That's huge.
It is. They've also got an experienced management team and plenty of cash with low debt.
And that big investment was a good sign, too.
Definitely shows someone believes in them.
All right, so strengths are good, but what about weaknesses?
Their biggest weakness is their financial performance.
Still not making money?
Right. Significant losses and burning cash.
Okay.
They're not using their assets very efficiently either. Plus, they're a small company, which makes their stock more volatile.
Right, and they're pretty reliant on just one product line.
Okay.
And their gross profit margin went down last quarter.
That's true.
And not many big investors or insiders own the stock.
Yeah, those are all valid concerns.
Okay, so weaknesses noted. What about opportunities? Where can they go from here?
They've got a lot of potential.
Good.
The SI joint fusion market is expected to grow like crazy.
That's the big one?
Yeah. And now they can access even more of that market with the new FDA clearance.
Right.
They could see more and more surgeons using their catamaran system.
Okay.
And they can expand into Europe with those patents.
And if analysts keep talking them up, they could attract more investors.
Absolutely. And they can keep innovating with new products like the Catamaran SE.
So lots of potential avenues for growth.
Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about.
But we got to talk about the threats too, right?
We do. There are some big challenges ahead.
Like what?
Well, first off, They're up against some major players in the
Oh,
market.
the big company. Yeah, those guys. And getting insurance companies to cover their procedures is always an uphill battle.
Right. They can be tough.
And there's always a chance that the Catamaran SE launch could be delayed.
Or that it won't be as successful as they hope.
Exactly. They might also need to raise more money, which could dilute existing shareholders.
That's always a risk.
It is, and of course, they need to turn things around and become profitable.
Right. Otherwise, they'll keep burning cash.
Yeah.
And there's always the chance that regulations could change or become even stricter.
That's true. It's a constant concern in this industry.
Plus, it's just hard to diagnose SI joint problems.
Yeah, that could limit the size of their market.
So it sounds like there's a lot of uncertainty here.
There is.
But that's often the case with these small growth companies. Okay, so let's bring it all together.
Right.
It seems pretty clear that the huge jump in Tenon's stock price was because of all that good news.
FDA clearance, European patents, the investment.
It all came together at the perfect time.
It did.
But if we look at this through the lens of value investing, it's still a bit of a head-scratcher, isn't it?
It's a mixed bag.
On the one hand, they've got this cool product.
Innovative.
Yeah, and the market is supposed to grow a lot.
Right.
And they've got an experienced team.
But they're not making any money.
And they're burning cash.
Those are big red flags for value investors.
They are.
Trying to figure out what the company is actually worth is really tough right now.
Yeah.
Analysts are optimistic, but there's a lot of speculation involved.
Especially with companies that haven't proven themselves yet.
Exactly. And it's hard to find that margin of safety that value investors love.
That cushion that protects you from losing money.
Right. That's hard to see here.
So for anyone looking at Tenon Medical now,
Yeah.
what should they be watching for going forward?
The big things are profitability insurance coverage and how well the Catamaran SC launch goes.
Okay, so those are the key metrics.
They are, and also keep an eye on the competition.
Can they hold their own against the big guys?
Can they keep innovating?
It's going to be interesting to watch.
It is.
Well, this has been a wild ride.
It have.
We've seen a company go from relative obscurity to the spotlight.
In a single day.
So for everyone listening, here's something to think about.
Okay.
With this crazy reevaluation by the market, is this the start of something big for Tenon Medical? Or will they struggle to make money in this competitive world?
Good question.
And what does this whole thing tell us about how people are investing in medical device innovation today?
That's a really important question to ponder.
It is. So if you enjoyed this deep dive,
And want to see more like it?
make sure you subscribe to the Stock Analytics AI YouTube channel.
And remember, this is just for informational purposes.
Not financial advice.
Do your own research before investing.
And AI was used to help us analyze all this information.
So keep that in mind.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.